The 11 million vote shockwave. How Tinubu left the opposition in shambles. Ask my country people, press your brakes, hold your pockets, and take a very deep breath, because what happened in Nigerian politics this past weekend needs its own special category in the Guinness World Records. While you were busy sleeping, struggling with electricity, watching football, or calculating exactly how much a bag of rice costs in the market today, the ruling All Progressives Congress held their nationwide presidential direct primaries across the country to choose their flag bearer for the general elections. And the final results that came out, let's just say standard mathematics, has completely left the shores of Nigeria. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did not just win the primary ticket to run for his second term in office, he practically vacuumed up the entire universe. According to the official announcement by the APC Presidential Election Committee, out of about 12.6 million registered party members across the nation, a whopping 10,199,162 people supposedly queued up, got accredited, and voted directly for a Asiwaju on a single Saturday. Now, who was he contesting against? A very brave, incredibly optimistic APC chieftain, Mr. Stanley Osifo. And how many votes did poor Stanley get? Exactly 16,503 votes. Think about that balance of power. 11 million votes for one single individual inside an internal party primary election. To put this into proper perspective, during the main, nationwide general election, Tinubu won the entire country and secured the presidency with 8.7 million total votes. But fast forward to today. Inside his own party primary alone, he has polled nearly 11 million votes. The opposition is crying foul, the internet is in stitches, and the political calculations for the upcoming election cycle have just been blown into outer space. This is a numbers game that defies gravity, logic, and textbook statistics. In this extensive, deep dive breakdown, we are going to unravel the absolute comedy of this primary, the immediate psychological meltdown of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the systemic reality of how these figures were generated, and how the opposition's grand mega-alliance completely disintegrated into dust before the main political war even started. If you are ready for premium, unadulterated Nigerian political drama, hit that like button, smash the subscribe button, and let's analyze this political miracle step by step. Let us begin by giving a legendary, standing ovation to Mr. Stanley Osifo. Seriously, wherever you are sitting or standing right now, raise your hands and clap for this man. To enter an internal presidential primary election against a sitting, incumbent president in the Federal Republic of Nigeria takes a level of raw boldness, courage, and optimism that modern science cannot explain. When Stanley first declared his intention to challenge the Jagaban for the ticket, journalists looked at him with pity. They asked him, "Oga, are you sure you are completely okay?" The entire APC machinery has already given Tinubu a screening waiver. Every governor, senator, and House of Assembly member is singing on your mandate. Why exactly are you stressing yourself and wasting your resources? But Stanley Osifo, with a completely straight face, told the world that his ambition was independent, free of any Godfather sponsorship, and strictly focused on bringing accelerated development to Nigeria. He actually believed that there was a level, democratic playing field where an ordinary party member could challenge the commander-in-chief and win. That is the kind of pure, innocent faith that can move mountains, but unfortunately, it cannot move the APC party structure. When the actual voting took place across the 36 states, 774 local governments, and over 8,000 wards, the party adopted the direct primary method. This means members queue up behind hosters. But guess who the party appointed to act as the chief collation officers for the states? The sitting APC governors themselves. Now, let us use our tongues to count our teeth. The very same state governors who rely on the presidency for federal allocations, political survival, security clearance, and future career endorsements are the ones tasked with counting the votes cast against the president. What did you honestly think was going to happen? Did you think a governor would sign a result sheet showing that the president lost in his state? By the time the final collation officers brought the results to the International Conference Center in Abuja, the outcome was mathematically majestic. Tinubu was swimming in millions, while Stanley Osifo was looking for his missing thousands. In state after state, Stanley's votes were so microscopic that they looked like typos. Oga Stanley's total national votes are not even up to the number of people inside a standard stadium or a mega church on a Sunday morning. But hey, let's look at the bright side. He can proudly tell his children and grandchildren that he wrestled with the master strategist. He did not win the ticket, but he survived the landslide without his political career being completely erased, and he didn't get suspended from the party. In the game of Nigerian politics, that alone is a successful outing. While the APC faithful were popping expensive champagne, dancing in the streets of Abuja, and praising the total consolidation of a CYG's political hold on the country, across town, another veteran statesman was furiously drafting a press release on his phone. Enter Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the former vice president, a legendary political general who has participated in multiple historic presidential runs, and who recently declared to the world that this upcoming election cycle will be his absolute final outing. Atiku took one look at that 11 million primary vote figure and completely lost his cool. He did not just reject the results. He dragged them through the mud, over the rocks, and into the Atlantic Ocean. A team quickly shot down the numbers, calling the entire exercise a fictional piece of theatre manufactured in a dark room. He released a scorching statement telling Nigerians to look at their bank balances, look at the cost of goods, look at the reality of inflation, and realize that these primary numbers do not reflect human beings walking on Nigerian soil. To be completely fair to Atiku's raw anger, from a purely analytical standpoint, you can see why the opposition is panicking. The mathematics behind this primary is truly giving what we call spiritual or digital arrangement. Let's break down the logic that is making Atiku stay awake at night. During a general election, the entire country comes out: APC members, PDP members, Labour Party members, and NPP members, and ordinary citizens who do not care about parties. In 2023, with all these groups combined, the total winning vote was 8.7 million. Now, the APC is telling us that in 2026, when only card-carrying members of one single party are allowed to vote in an internal election, they somehow managed to gather 11 million real, physical human beings to queue up in front of ward offices on a Saturday morning. That means the APC internal membership turnout alone is significantly higher than the entire national mandate used to secure the presidency 3 years ago. The APC's media team has a very simple defense for this. They came out and said, look, over the last 3 years, we carried out a massive, aggressive nationwide membership registration drive. We registered over 12 million members, and our people are just wildly enthusiastic about our economic reforms, our infrastructure projects, and our vision for the country. But Atiku and the opposition are screaming that this is a psychological operation. They argue that the ruling party is using massive numbers to create an aura of invincibility. The strategy is to make the opposition feel completely defeated, overwhelmed, and powerless before the actual general election campaign even kicks off. Atiku wants to frame the upcoming battle around the economy, but his main problem right now isn't even the APC's numbers. It is the absolute chaos happening inside his own camp. Let us transition away from the APC's magic numbers and talk about the absolute comedy happening within the Nigerian opposition leadership. For the past several months, the biggest headline across every major newspaper, blog, and political talk show was the impending arrival of the Grand Alliance or the Mega Party. The narrative was simple and logical. The opposition realized that as long as they remained divided into separate smaller parties, they would never be able to defeat the ruling party's entrenched structure. So, big moves were made. Atiku Abubakar moved his structure out of the PDP. Peter Obi faced endless leadership struggles inside the Labour Party over convention venues and nomination forms, leading to massive friction. Rabiu Kwankwaso was holding down his tightly knit movement in Kano. Eventually, they all began to gather under the umbrella of a single platform, the African Democratic Congress, or the ADC. On paper, this plan was a political nuclear bomb. Think about the numbers if they actually worked together. You take Atiku's deep northern network, add Peter Obi's fiercely loyal youth movement, and mix it with Kwankwaso's highly organized followers in the ancient city of Kano. If you add their performance from the previous cycle together, they represented over 60% of the total votes cast in the country. The plan was for these three heavyweights to collapse their individual egos, form a unified front, and present one single, consensus candidate to challenge Tinubu face to face. But as it always happens in Nigerian history, personal ambition and political ego entered the room and turned the lights off. To make a coalition work in reality, someone has to willingly step down, swallow their pride, and agree to play second fiddle. But inside this alliance, who is going to make that sacrifice? Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, for his age, his vast experience, and his massive financial network, and says, "This is my final attempt at the presidency. I am the elder statesman here. Everyone else should step down for me." Peter Obi's passionate support base looks at the digital space and says, "We represent the organic movement of the youth, the future of the country, and the real alternative. You old politicians have had your time. You should step down for Obi." Meanwhile, Rabiu Kwankwaso looks at his massive hold on Kano State and says, "I control the most critical voting bloc in the north. I cannot surrender my structure to a southern candidate or an old rival." This ego deadlock is exactly why the Minister of Aviation, Festus Keyamo, famously went on television and labeled them the coalition of confusion. And if we are being completely honest, can you blame him? Instead of sitting down in a room to iron out a consensus candidate, as they promised the public, the individual ambitions of these heavyweights have caused the entire Grand Alliance to fracture. Just days ago, Atiku went ahead to officially purchase, fill, and submit his personal expression of interest and nomination forms under the party platform. There was no consensus meeting, no joint press conference, and no teamwork. Everyone is now running their own separate race under the same roof. They wanted to build an unstoppable wall against the ruling party, but instead, they have built a house of confusion, completely clearing the path for the APC to coast through the next election cycle without breaking a sweat. To fully understand why this 11 million vote primary result dropped like a bomb, we have to look past the political talk and look at the actual ground reality of how the ruling party is positioning itself. The APC is operating on a dual strategy, maximizing political structure while aggressively commissioning high-visibility infrastructure projects to rewrite the public narrative, while the opposition is locked in an endless cycle of arguments over who gets to be the flag bearer. The presidency has been on a massive project commissioning spree across the geopolitical zones. Let's look at the tangible developments that the ruling party is weaponizing as campaign material. The Trans-Sahara and coastal highway networks. Massive construction updates showing actual asphalt being laid down across critical economic corridors, linking commercial hubs directly to deep-sea ports. The 6,000 megawatt power milestone. Continuous media campaigns highlighting improvements in grid stability and the revitalization of regional transmission lines to boost industrial production. The Abuja-Lagos rail expansion. High-definition videos of fully operational rail networks moving thousands of passengers daily, presented as evidence of structural modernization. The APC uses these physical projects as an unassailable shield. When the opposition screams about inflation, the ruling party's media machinery instantly floods the digital space with drone shots of newly completed highways, active bridge constructions, and industrial parks. They want to create a visual reality where progress looks inevitable, regardless of the temporary economic pains felt by the citizens. On the flip side, The economic reality on the ground is that the primary weapon the opposition is trying to use, the removal of subsidies, the floating of the currency, and the subsequent rise in the cost of basic commodities, have created a highly charged atmosphere among ordinary citizens. Atiku's entire campaign strategy relies heavily on converting this economic frustration into raw votes at the ballot box. He's telling the electorate, do not look at the shiny bridges they are building. Look at your food baskets, look at your school fees, and look at your purchasing power. However, this strategy can only work if there is a unified, credible alternative to harvest those frustrated votes. If the votes of the angry citizens are split between Atiku, Peter Obi, and Kwankwaso, the ruling party's solid 11 million strong structural base will easily carry them to victory. Even if a large portion of the general public is dissatisfied, that is the cold, hard science of electoral arithmetic that the opposition is refusing to acknowledge to truly comprehend how a single party can generate nearly 11 million votes in an internal primary. We have to pull back the curtain and look at the actual mechanics of how a direct primary functions in Nigeria. Most people are used to indirect primaries, where a few selected delegates go to a stadium in Abuja, get given luxury hotel rooms, receive envelopes of cash, and cast their votes on television. But the APC chose the direct primary system for this cycle, meaning every single person who holds a valid party membership card across the 8,809 wards in Nigeria is technically eligible to participate. When you understand how rural and grassroots mobilization works in Nigeria, you will see how these massive numbers are generated. In the villages, inside the core local government areas, party membership is not just a political affiliation, it is a social network, a source of communal identity, and often a pipeline for local empowerment, agricultural inputs, and community development funds. When a ward chairman receives instructions from the state governor and the local government chairman that a direct primary is happening on Saturday, the entire community machinery is activated. The process of compiling these numbers doesn't look like a standard general election and managed by independent international observers. It is an entirely internal affair handled by party loyalists. The ward chairmen open their ledger books, register the members present, count the queues, and write down the numbers on the result sheets. These sheets are then moved to the local government headquarters, signed by the council chairman, and forwarded directly to the state capital, where the governor certifies them, because there are no opposition party agents from rival parties present at these polling units to challenge the calculations. Since everyone present belongs to the same party, the numbers can be compiled with maximum efficiency and zero friction. If a ward chairman holds 1,500 votes for the incumbent and 2 votes for the challenger, there is no independent body on the ground to double-check the register. This is why direct primaries in African politics historically produce landslide figures that look like fairy tales to outside observers. It is an exercise in total structural coordination, where the party shows off its administrative muscles to intimidate anyone thinking of contesting against them in the main event. Let us look at the geographical data of where these 11 million votes actually originated, because the regional distribution of the numbers tells a very deep political story. The results didn't just drop from the sky in equal measures. They came from highly calculated, densely populated political strongholds, where the ruling party has absolute control over the local government administrations. The biggest numbers came directly from the northwest zone states like Kano, Kaduna, Katsina, and Sokoto. In these states alone, the party apparatus recorded millions of active participants. This is a direct message to Rabiu Kwankwaso and Atiku Abubakar. The APC is effectively saying, you think you own the North? Look at our registers. Look at how many people we can mobilize in your own backyard, while you are still trying to settle your court cases in Abuja. The second major wave of numbers came from the Southwest Zone, which is the traditional political home base of the president. In states like Lagos, Oyo, Ogun, and Osun, the party structures mobilized their members in full force, turning the primary into a carnival-like celebration of local solidarity. Even in the north central and parts of the south-south zones, where the opposition usually expects to find significant footing, the certified result sheet showed massive, uniform numbers favoring the incumbent. Major zone vote distribution: North-West, Zone 3.8 million Vitesith West, Zone 2.9 million votes North Central, 1.8 million votes other zones combined, 2.5 million, 11.0 million votes. What makes this regional breakdown so terrifying for the opposition is that it proves the ruling party's governors are fully aligned and working in perfect sync with the center. In Nigerian politics, a governor who can deliver hundreds of thousands of votes during an internal party primary is a governor who has complete control over the local electoral machinery. If these governors can repeat even half of this level of coordination in the main general elections, the opposition's dream of staging a political upset will remain a permanent illusion. Atiku and his team are looking at this map and realizing that their traditional paths to securing 25% of the votes in multiple states have been heavily fortified by the incumbent's allies. Step away from the politicians for a moment and let us look at what the intellectual community, the data scientists, and the independent political analysts are saying across the country. Go on any major news platform or political blog right now, and you will see a fierce debate raging among experts who are trying to dissect the statistical validity of the 11 million vote phenomenon. On one side of the aisle, you have the skeptical analysts who argue that these numbers violate the basic principles of demographic turnout patterns in developing democracies. They point out that even in highly advanced nations with electronic voting systems, getting an 85 to 90% turnout rate among registered party members for an internal, uncontested primary is practically impossible. They look at the current economic challenges, the logistics of moving people to ward offices, and the general political apathy among citizens, and they conclude that these figures are simply paper numbers generated through administrative calculations rather than physical cues on the asphalt. The skeptic's view, the loyalist's view. Turnout defies human logistics. Turnout reflects new digital registration and test races, depress voting. Aggressive local mobilization drives numbers. Economic apathy reduces interest. Governors use direct community incentives. On the other side of the aisle, the ruling party's intellectual defenders have come out with their own data models to support the results. They argue that critics are failing to understand the power of digital registration and grassroots incentives. They explain that over the past 24 months, the party deployed digital biometric registration tools to capture the data of real citizens at the village level, linking their membership directly to localized empowerment schemes, agricultural inputs, and community leadership structures. According to this perspective, when you give an ordinary citizen a direct stake as survival of the party's local structure, they will willingly show up to vote, even if the main national race is already decided. They argue that the 11 million votes represent a validated, active database of loyalists who are ready to defend their mandate at any cost, regardless of which side of the debate you choose to believe. One thing is completely undeniable: the ruling party has set a massive statistical benchmark that has completely shifted the burden of proof onto the shoulders of the opposition, and what we are witnessing right now is not just an electoral exercise. It is a masterclass in advanced political psychological warfare. In high-stakes politics, the perception of power is often just as important as power itself. If you can make your opponents believe that you are too strong, too organized, and too entrenched to be defeated, you have won half the battle before a single ballot box is even placed on a table. By structuring the primary to produce an overwhelming landslide of 11 million votes, the strategic planners inside the ruling party have successfully created a narrative of absolute invincibility. They want every opposition leader, every financial donor, and every ordinary voter to look at the scoreboard and say, What is the point of even trying? The gap is too wide to close. This strategy is designed to achieve 3 specific psychological objectives. 1. To discourage financial backers. Wealthy political donors do not like to throw their millions into a losing venture. When they see a sitting government polling 11 million votes just within its own primary, they become extremely hesitant to fund the expensive campaigns of opposition candidates. 2. To fuel internal opposition blame. It forces the leaders of the fragmented alliance to start looking at each other with suspicion, blaming one another for failing to unite early enough to prevent this massive show of force. 3. To depress general voter turnout. If ordinary citizens believe the outcome is already written in stone by a highly coordinated party machinery, they are much less likely to spend hours standing in line on election day, which automatically advantages the party with the larger organized base. This is the invisible wall that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi currently running into. It is not just about competing against the current policies of the government. It is about breaking the psychological spell of inevitability that the ruling party has cast over the political landscape. If the opposition cannot find a way to project their own authentic message of strength and unity, their supporters will simply stay at home, allowing the incumbent to cruise into a second tenure with historical ease. As the dust settles over the primary election venues and the official result sheets are permanently archived in the party's secretariat, the grand countdown to the general election has officially begun. The political map of Nigeria has been redrawn. The battle lines are clearly defined, and the strategic options available to both sides are shrinking by the day. For the ruling party, the path forward is a straightforward strategy of execution and defense. They will continue to leverage the power of incumbency, use state resources to expand their grassroots networks, and keep commissioning high-impact infrastructure projects to validate their performance narrative. They know that, as long as they can keep their internal coalition of governors, senators, and local leaders unified, their structural advantage remains completely bulletproof. Their goal over the next few months is simple: maintain the momentum, keep the opposition disorganized, and ensure that their 11 million strong base shows up in full force when the national polls open. For the opposition leaders gathered under the fragile roof of the mega-alliance, the next few weeks represent a critical existential turning point. The time for media games, vague press statements, and social media posturing is officially over. The 11 million vote shockwave was a brutal wake-up call, showing them that the ruling party is playing for keeps. If Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, and Rabiu Kwankwaso want to remain relevant in the grand calculus of 2027, they have to urgently make a choice between their individual personal ambitions and the survival of their collective movement. They must either return to the negotiation table, swallow their pride, agree on a single consensus flag bearer, and build a massive, real-world grassroots structure that can match the ruling party Ward 4 ward, or they must prepare to face a historic, coordinated defeat that will permanently solidify the current administration's hold on power for the next 4 years. The political clock is ticking loudly. The stakes have never been higher, and the entire nation is watching to see who will make the next definitive move on this grand geopolitical chessboard. What is your honest take on this political drama? Do you believe the ruling party successfully pulled out 11 million real, breathing human beings to vote on a single Saturday morning? Or do you agree with Atiku Abubakar's position that these figures came straight out of a Creative Office script? And do you think the opposition leaders can ever resolve their egos to form a genuine united front before it is too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. I read every single one of them. If this deep dive analysis helped you understand the raw mechanics of Nigerian politics clearly, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button right now. It tells the YouTube algorithm that deep, structured political content deserves to be pushed to millions of viewers. And if you haven't joined the family yet, click that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next major political expose. Share this video on your WhatsApp status, Twitter Spaces, and Facebook groups to get your friends talking. Thank you so much for watching. Keep your eyes wide open, stay safe, and I will see you in the very next video. Peace.